What's going on with the left and the Democrats? Why does it seem like they just can't take advantage of a chaotic first 100 days of the Trump administration? Are they squandering this opportunity? I mean, Signalgate, tariffs, Doge, there is a lot out there. And yet, what are we seeing? The door is now open for some off-the-wall potential 2028 presidential candidate like ESPN's Stephen A. Smith? I don't know if America is ready for Vice President Mad Dog Russo or Health and Human Services Secretary Skip Bayless. But I'll tell you what, stranger things have happened, to say the least. Now, I don't know, maybe Bernie Sanders making a cameo at Coachella or Bill Maher breaking bread with Donald Trump. It's been quite a time on the left, and we're going to discuss it all right here, right now on The Spin Room. I'm Jesse Weber. So what is happening with the Democrats, right? The party has been spinning its wheels since Donald Trump returned to office. And now you have a bit of a power vacuum. You got a bunch of Democrats trying to step in to fill the void, to become the party's standard bearer going into 2028. Here's the thing, though. Before they can truly look ahead to 2028, they got to turn the page on 2024 fully. And that becomes a little harder to do with former President Joe Biden returning to the limelight, delivering his first major speech since leaving office on Tuesday in Chicago. And as you would expect, he didn't really have many nice things to say about his successor.
Fewer than 100 days, this new administration
I'm actually surprised to see him. I didn't think that he would give any speeches. I thought that would be, be on the beach.
Done so much damage and so much destruction. It's kind of breathtaking it could happen that soon. Republicans, or these guys, are willing to hurt the middle class and the working class in order to deliver significant greater wealth to the already very wealthy. Who in the hell do they think they are?
Now look, Democrats surely don't disagree with that message, and you might have some people who voted for Donald Trump, moderate Republicans, who might be agreeing as well. But look, most of them are ready for a new messenger, and some of them have been ready for quite a while. On Wednesday, George Clooney gave a rare interview to CNN's Jake Tapper, talked about that op-ed he wrote for the New York Times following the infamous debate between Biden and Trump, in which the famed actor called out President Biden's cognitive function. He wrote at the time, quote, "Our party leaders need to stop telling us that 51 million people didn't see what we just saw. We're all so terrified by the prospect of a second Trump term that we've opted to ignore every warning sign." And on Wednesday, Clooney told Jake Tapper why he wrote this shocking column, which may have helped drive President Biden from the race.
Well, I don't know if it was brave. It was a civic duty.
By the way, shocking seeing him with the hair. I know he has it for Broadway. He actually pulls it off better than most people his age. Still not used to it, though.
Because I found that people on my side of the street, I'm a Democrat. I was a Democrat in Kentucky, so I get it. When I saw people on my side of the street not telling the truth, I thought that was time to...
He makes a point, right? But that's the problem. That's the problem. Before President Biden's implosion in the debate last summer, so many Democrats insisted that Joe Biden was totally fine. In public, they said that. He was sharp as a tack. I think back to that great SNL sketch. It was last year when Ego Wodum, playing Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, got indignant at the notion that Biden had lost a step.
Pleasure to be with you to talk about the most vigorous man I've ever known, Joe Biden.
Really?
Absolutely. I was just with him. And behind closed doors, he's a whirlwind. I mean, Dana, look at his schedule. 7 a.m. Soul Cycle class. And I'm not talking about taking one. He leads it.
By the way, it was really crazy that SNL is doing this, right?
8:30 a.m. Plays speed chess in the park. 8:32 a.m. Wins chess game, points at opponent and says, "Next time, young blood." 9:30 a.m. Meets with Joint Chiefs for a military strategy meeting and push-up contest. 10:02 a.m. Wins contest, points at the head of the Joint Chiefs and says, "Next time, young blood." 10:03 to 11, train time. And that's all before a lunch where he eats 5 whole chickens and a raw potato.
When I look at that, is it outside the realm of possibility that Donald Trump's team would say the same kind of thing? Maybe different activities, but the same kind of thing. We did a whole episode on Donald Trump's golf game, beat 2 professional pros or something like that. Listen, classic. The reason that sketch resonated so much is because it was obvious to everyone that President Biden wasn't up to another 4 years in office. It was obvious to everyone except many leading Democrats, apparently, again, at least in public. And that is an automatic strike against any potential 2028 candidate who vouched for the former president. And that impacts so many people at the top of the party, which leaves a big leadership void. So who's going to step up? Huh? Who's going to step up? Well, I'll tell you what. Several are trying with some pretty grand maneuvers. Earlier this month, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker broke the record for longest Senate speech ever, speaking more than 25 hours straight.
The senator yield for a question.
Chuck Schumer, it's the only time in my life I can tell you no.
I just want to tell you a question. Do you know you have just broken the record? Do you know how proud this caucus is of you? Do you know how proud America is of you?
Honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I watched him wandering around, pacing there. All I could think about was, that looks like a guy who really needs to use the bathroom. Yeah, that's what I thought. Turns out he fasted. He dehydrated himself for several days prior to the speech. Got to give him credit. Look, I don't think I would want to hear anyone speak for 25 hours. Even if you have Morgan Freeman, who has the best voice anyone could ever imagine, I wouldn't even want him to read me a story for 25 hours. But back to Cory Booker. In an effort to try to identify someone, anyone, to lead the Democrats in 2028, some pundits might have gone maybe a bit too far hyping up Booker's speech. Prominent pollster Frank Luntz was downright giddy over the New Jersey senator's address.
They're going crazy right now. And they're going crazy because they don't see leadership in their own party. And I want to emphasize what Cory Booker did over the last 24 hours may have changed the course of political history.
Change the course of political history? Really? Really? It's a bit much. No? Now look, Luntz clearly thinks the speech was a big deal. He explained why to News Nation's Leland Vitter.
But he struck the kind of tone that grassroots Democrats are looking for. He gave them a reason to fight. He gave them a reason to stand up and say, this is my country too. Of course, every Republican watching will say, this is nonsense. But he's not speaking just to Republicans. He's speaking to Americans. And what I saw over the last 25 hours absolutely blew me away. And just as you sometimes make projections or predictions, I'm going to do one right here. That speech puts Cory Booker as one of the leaders for the Democratic Party, 2028.
But hey, maybe Frank Luntz knew what he was talking about. There's this brand new 2028 poll from Echelon Insights, puts Booker in second place in the Democratic field with 11%. Number one is former Vice President Kamala Harris. Is she a placeholder, though? Someone forgot to take her off the list? I don't know. I say that also because history has shown that failed presidential candidates usually have inflated numbers in early polls for the next cycle. But Booker's in a very good spot early in the race, even if he may not have exactly, changed the course of political history. But he's not the only major Democrat to try and get some attention with an unusual speech. How about Bernie Sanders speaking to a massive crowd at Coachella? Yeah, the 83-year-old senator got a massive welcome from the mostly Gen Z crowd at the big music festival out in California. Well, of course, criticizing President Trump.
Now we got a president of the United States who...
Encore! Encore, Bernie!
I agree.
That's some Coachella lineup, huh? Right? We got Megan Thee Stallion, Travis Scott, Bernie Sanders, just electric. He goes crowd surfing. I'm voting for him. He's got my vote. But Coachella was just one stop for Sanders on his fighting oligarchy tour. And while there's not much presidential buzz around the Vermont senator, there is quite a bit building around his companion on the tour, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC, the senator and congresswoman, they are holding rallies, getting big turnouts in red cities like Nampa, Idaho, Missoula, Montana, and she is taking the fight right to the president.
Donald Trump is a criminal. He was found guilty of 34 felony counts of fraud, found liable for sexual abuse. And if he wants to find the rapists and criminals in this country, he should look in the mirror.
Not really holding anything back there at all. By the way, he wasn't, found liable or ever convicted of rape. Just got to be clear about that. But look, AOC is definitely getting some traction here. She is tied for third in that poll that we mentioned earlier. And election guru Nate Silver actually just made AOC his top pick for a 2028 Democratic nominee. Not unexpected. She's been in the field for a while, part of the conversation. But there are plenty of others who seem to be positioning themselves for a White House bid in unusual ways. You got California Governor Gavin Newsom started a podcast where he has invited right-wing guests on for largely cordial conversations. Newsom has kind of just let his guests say their piece, minimal pushback, and this has been to the upset of many on the left. In fact, the governor recently spoke to Steve Bannon. Didn't really challenge his assertion that President Trump won the 2020 election.
After President Trump, and look, we disagree on this, but President Trump won the 2020 election, and we were kind of shattered as a movement when he left Washington, D.C., and we had to go back to basics to say, it can't be somebody else do something. We had to do something, and that's where we went back to really a pure populist movement to go.
Do you love the eagle in the background, by the way?
To go at the grassroots, the precinct strategy, and kind of rebuild ourselves from there.
Wait, why don't I have that? I need something like that.
Well, and I appreciate the notion of agency, that we're not bystanders in the world. It's decisions, not conditions, that determine our fate and future. And that
What does that even mean? Look, you got a couple of interesting strategies at play here, right? You got AOC, Cory Booker, really trying to appeal to the grassroots. And then you got Gavin Newsom, maybe thinking more about a general election, trying to expand the tent a little bit. May make things a little tough for him in a primary, right? But here's the thing. He's in sixth place with just 4%, according to that echelon poll I mentioned before. And by the way, the Newsom-Bannon sit-down is not the only unusual left-right summit that we've seen lately. How about Donald Trump having dinner at the White House with Bill Maher? Who saw that one coming? The HBO Real-Time host actually delivered a pretty glowing report on his audience with the president.
I never felt I had to walk on eggshells around him. And honestly, I voted for Clinton and Obama, but I would never feel comfortable talking to them the way I was able to talk with Donald Trump. That's just how it went down. Make of it what you will. Me, I feel it's emblematic of why the Democrats are so unpopular these days. You can hate me for it, but I'm not a liar. Trump was gracious and measured, and why he isn't that in other settings, I don't know, and I can't answer, and it's not my place to answer. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I wasn't high.
Look, he's got no advantage of saying this. It just seems to me he's telling the truth about his opinion of what that meeting was like. I never thought to see that one. These two, no love lost in the past. They have gone after each other for years, to the point, you might remember this, Trump once sued Bill Maher for comparing his father to an orangutan. But this happened. It's pretty wild stuff. What do we got next? Jimmy Kimmel going to play golf with Trump next? No, that's probably never going to happen. But that's not the only unusual White House meetup that's taken place recently. No, Democratic Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, another who has been mentioned in the 2028 Derby, visited the Oval Office, although she didn't seem to be too excited to be spotted there. Check out this awkward photo of the governor holding up a folder to cover her face. Yikes. Yeah, that'll do it. The Clark Kent with glasses kind of thing, right? Not exactly incognito there, is she? And in a moment, that surely won't play well in a Democratic primary because President Trump had some very nice things to say about her.
We're honored to have Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, great state of Michigan. And she's really done an excellent job and a very good person.
If she puts her hat in the ring, okay, that clip is going to be on every ad. That is ready-made campaign for a Democratic primary opponent, right? We're going to see if that comes back to haunt her in the coming months. But look, you have Whitmer, you got Booker, you got AOC, you got Gavin Newsom, and George Clooney, because in his CNN interview Wednesday, I forgot to mention this, pushed really hard for another prominent Democrat, Maryland Governor Wes Moore.
Wes Moore, I think he is the guy that he's handled this tragedy in Baltimore beautifully. He's two tours of duty in Afghanistan, active duty. He speaks sort of beautifully. He's smart. He ran a hedge fund. He ran the Robin Hood Foundation. He's a proper leader. And Democrats, the thing is, we say Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line. Although I think Republicans have fallen in love a little bit. I like him a lot. I think he could be someone we could all join in behind.
I don't know. That'd be a fairly conventional pick, right? Governor Moore, young, up and coming, mid-Atlantic state, has a fairly high approval rating. But a lot of people wonder if this is not the time for Democrats to go with an inside-the-box candidate, which is why Clooney's name himself is getting floated by some people, including New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd.
Yeah, I interviewed George Clooney for one of these New York Times profiles, like I have in the book recently, for this Edward R. Murrow play he's doing, and the interview lasted 5 hours. So finally I'm like, well, would you want to run for president? And he said no, but he didn't say it that convincingly.
And Dowd went on to explain why she thinks a Clooney nomination would work out well for the Democrats.
That Democrats always do best when they have someone who's charming and who has some charisma, like JFK or Obama or even, Bill Clinton at the beginning.
But someone you don't know a lot about, which is best.
Yeah. I mean, I think Democrats are going to kind of score in celebrity at their own cost, because I just think Trump has raised an appetite in people for having like a showman, a little bit of a showman.
Well, for many on the left, they said they have an appetite for anybody else. Look, Dowd is pushing for a celebrity candidate. And for the moment, George Clooney doesn't seem to be willing to play, but there are other celebrities who are only too happy to fill the void. You know who I'm talking about? ESPN's First Take host Stephen A. Smith. Who expected this one? The famed sports debater actually hit the Sunday morning talk show circuit over the weekend, trying to convince ABC's John Carl that he doesn't actually want to run for president, but just can't say no to all the people urging him to take the leap.
You think? Listen, I've been. I have no choice, because I've had elected officials, and I'm not going to give their names. Elected officials coming up to me. I've had folks who are pundits come up to me.
I believe this.
That got a lot of money, billionaires and others, that have talked to me about exploratory committees and things of that nature. I'm not a politician. I've never had a desire to be a politician. I just signed a contract extension with ESPN. I am very, very
pretty
happy
good one too.
With my.
But that's the problem, right? There's an appetite for just like anybody outside the box because of what people are seeing happening right now.
With my day job, I'm very happy with my boss. This is a pretty damn good one. Just right. It's a pretty damn good contract. I couldn't be happier.
I have no choice. The public demands Stephen A. Smith. He's got to give them what they want, right? By the way, the pollsters have started putting Stephen A.'s name into the mix now for the 2028 surveys. Right now, guess what it is? The Echelon poll has him at 1%. Still early, though. Could change. My opinion, my take, with all the radical and out-of-the-box initiatives that we're seeing from the Trump administration right now, it really shouldn't take much for an alternative. What do I mean by that? The Democrats, they should consider a moderate approach. Doesn't have to be crazy. Someone who's more a return to center and not a return to Biden. I don't mean that. Not a return to the status quo, not a return to statements that haven't been working for them. You don't have to go to left field. I think being reassured at a time when there is a lot of uncertainty, that in and of itself, just that can go a long way. That does it for us here on The Spin Room. I'm Jesse Weber. We'll see you next time.